Sophie was diagnosed with autism at age 3. While other parents might have seen it as a tragedy, I saw it as understanding my brilliant daughter better. She processed the world differently. Sounds were louder, textures more intense, social cues harder to read. But her mind worked in ways that amazed me daily. At 7 years old, she could solve complex mathematical patterns that stumped adults. She remembered entire conversations verbatim and noticed details others missed completely. Her autism wasn't a disability to overcome. It was simply how her extraordinary brain functioned. My family never understood this. My sister Karen treated Sophie like a broken toy that needed fixing. My brother Mike acted like autism was contagious, keeping his own children at a safe distance. My mother constantly suggested treatments and therapies to make Sophie more normal. "She's not normal, David," Mom would say during our increasingly rare visits. "You need to accept that and get her proper help. She doesn't need to be normal, Mom. She needs to be accepted for who she is." That's just denial talking. Look how she acts around other children. It was true that Sophie struggled in social situations. Large groups overwhelmed her. Unexpected sounds made her anxious, and changes in routine could trigger meltdowns. But at home, she was happy, creative, and endlessly curious about how things worked. My work kept us busy anyway. As a research scientist at the university, I spent long hours in the lab studying neural networks and brain connectivity patterns. Sophie often came with me after school, quietly drawing or reading while I worked late. She loved the lab's organized environment and predictable routines. Easter Sunday arrived with the usual family gathering at Karen's house. I'd been dreading it for weeks, knowing how stressful these events were for Sophie, but she'd been excited about seeing her cousins. "Remember, we can leave any time you want," I told Sophie as we walked up to Karen's front door. "Just give me our signal if it gets too much." Sophie nodded seriously. Our signal was her touching my arm twice, a discreet way for her to tell me she needed a break. The house was chaos. Karen's 3 kids were running around screaming. Mike's twins were arguing over toys, and the adults were drinking and talking loudly over a blaring TV. Sophie immediately moved closer to me, overwhelmed by the sensory assault. "Sophie," Karen called out cheerfully. "Come give Aunt Karen a hug." Sophie shook her head, hiding behind my legs. Forced physical contact was one of her biggest challenges. "She's being rude," Karen said, her smile fading. "David, make her hug me properly." "She's not being rude. She's overstimulated. Give her a few minutes to adjust." Karen rolled her eyes, but moved on to greeting other relatives. Sophie and I found a quiet corner where she could observe the chaos from a safe distance. Things went downhill from there. When Sophie stymied by gently rocking back and forth, something that helped her process the overwhelming sensory input, Mike loudly asked if she was having some kind of fit. When she politely declined to play a loud group game that would have been torture for her sensitive hearing, my mother announced that she was antisocial and needs more therapy. But the breaking point came at dinner. Karen had set up a kids' table in the dining room, where all the children were supposed to eat together. Sophie took one look at the chaos, 7 kids talking and laughing loudly, clattering utensils, food being thrown around, and touched my arm twice. "She needs a quieter space to eat," I told Karen. "Could she have a spot at the adult table? Or maybe we could set up a small table in the living room." "Absolutely not," Karen said firmly. "The kids eat at the kids' table. That's how family dinners work. Karen, she's autistic. The sensory overload. I don't care what she is. She needs to learn to fit in with normal children." I try to compromise. "What if I sit with her at the kids' table? That might help. The kids' table is for kids only. You're not enabling her antisocial behavior in my house." Sophie was getting more distressed by the minute, the noise and conflict clearly overwhelming her. She began rocking more noticeably, a self-soothing behavior that helped her cope with stress. "Look at her," Mike said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "She's doing that weird thing again. It's freaking out the other kids." "She's stimming," I said through gritted teeth. "It's completely normal for autistic children." "Well, it's not normal for normal children," Karen snapped. "And frankly, David, I'm tired of every family gathering being disrupted by her issues." "Her issues." "Yes, her issues. The rocking, the refusing to interact, the way she stares at people. It makes everyone uncomfortable. I looked around the room at my family. People who'd known Sophie her entire life, who'd watched her grow and learn and develop into an amazing little person. And all they could see was what made them uncomfortable. Fine, Karen said, clearly frustrated. If she can't handle eating with the other children, she can eat in the garage. There's a folding table out there. It'll be quiet. I stared at her in disbelief. The garage. It's a perfectly clean garage. There's good lighting, it's temperature controlled, and she won't disturb the normal kids. The normal kids, as if Sophie was some kind of abnormality that needed to be hidden away. You want my daughter to eat Easter dinner alone in a garage because she has autism? I want her daughter to eat somewhere she won't disrupt everyone else's good time. This is supposed to be a family celebration, David, not a therapy session. I looked at Sophie, who was now visibly upset, tears starting to form in her eyes as she processed the rejection and hostility around her. She understood more than people gave her credit for. She knew she was being excluded, treated as less than. "Come on, sweetheart," I said gently, taking her hand. "We're going home." "David, don't be dramatic," Mom called out. Karen's just trying to accommodate everyone. By isolating a 7-year-old in a garage, by calling her abnormal, by making her feel like she's not welcome in her own family. "She's welcome," Karen said defensively, just appropriately. I gathered Sophie's jacket and our things while she stood quietly beside me, processing the cruelty she'd just witnessed. "You're making a mistake," Mike said as we headed for the door. "Sophie needs to learn to adapt to the real world. You can't protect her forever." "I'm not protecting her from the real world," I said, my voice steady despite my rage. "I'm protecting her from people who think she's less valuable because she's different." We left without another word. In the car, Sophie was quiet for a long time before finally speaking. "Daddy, why don't they like me?" "It's not that they don't like you, sweetheart. They just don't understand how special you are." "Am I really abnormal?" "No, baby. You're different. Different is not the same as abnormal. Different is what makes you extraordinary." That night, Sophie helped me in my home office as I worked on my latest research project, a study of neural connectivity patterns in neurodivergent individuals. She drew pictures while I analyzed data, her presence a comfort after the day's cruelty. "Daddy," she said suddenly, "what if different brains could help normal brains work better?" Her innocent question sparked something in my mind. What if neurodivergent processing patterns could actually enhance neural network efficiency in typical brains? I spent the next 6 months diving deeper into this concept than I'd ever explored anything before. Sophie's autism became my inspiration, not my burden. I studied how her brain processed information differently, how her pattern recognition abilities surpassed typical cognitive functions, how her attention to detail revealed connections others missed. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning in October. I developed a neural interface technology that could temporarily replicate certain neurodivergent processing patterns in neurotypical brains, enhancing memory, pattern recognition, and analytical thinking by over 300%. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about helping people with brain injuries or cognitive disorders. This was about unlocking human potential that had been there all along, hidden in the minds of people society often dismissed as abnormal. My research paper was published in Nature Neuroscience to immediate international acclaim. Within weeks, I was fielding calls from researchers around the world, tech companies offering billions for licensing deals, and government agencies interested in the applications for everything from education to national security. The media attention was overwhelming. "Revolutionary breakthrough in cognitive enhancement," read the headlines. "Scientist uses daughter's autism to transform human intelligence." But the call that mattered most came on a Thursday afternoon in December. "Dr. Martinez?" "This is Dr. Elizabeth Nordstrom calling from the Nobel Committee in Stockholm." I nearly dropped the phone. "The committee would like to inform you that you've been selected as this year's recipient of the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for your groundbreaking work in neural interface technology and cognitive enhancement." 6 months after my family forced Sophie to eat in a garage, I was receiving the highest honor in scientific achievement. The news broke internationally within hours. My phone didn't stop ringing. Reporters, colleagues, university officials, government representatives. But the calls I didn't answer were from Karen, Mike, and my mother. Their voicemails told the story of their delayed realization. David, I just saw the news. I had no idea your work was so important. Maybe we could get together soon to celebrate your achievement. We're so proud of you. Sophie is such a special girl. Sophie listened to the messages with me, her 7-year-old mind processing the sudden change in tone from people who treated her like a burden just months before. Now they think I'm special? She asked. You were always special, sweetheart. Now they finally realize it. The Nobel ceremony in Stockholm was magical. Sophie wore a beautiful blue dress and sat in the front row, beaming with pride as I accepted the medal and prize. In my acceptance speech, I spoke about the real inspiration for my work. This discovery came not from years of traditional research, but from watching my autistic daughter navigate a world that too often sees neurodivergence as a problem to be solved rather than a gift to be celebrated. Sophie's brain works differently than mine, and that difference is precisely what made this breakthrough possible. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Sophie stimmied happily in her seat, unbothered by the noise because she knew it was celebration, not chaos. We returned home to find my family desperately wanting to reconnect. Karen sent expensive gifts and invitations to make up for past misunderstandings. Mike suggested family photos for his social media. Mom wanted to write about her brilliant son and granddaughter for her church newsletter. But Sophie remembered the garage. She remembered being called abnormal, being treated like a disruption, being made to feel unwelcome at her own family's table. Do you want to see them? I asked her. She considered this seriously, as she considered everything. Not yet, Daddy. Maybe when they understand that different isn't bad. I couldn't have said it better myself. The prize money went into a foundation supporting neurodivergent children and their families. The technology one developed is now helping millions of people enhance their cognitive abilities while simultaneously advancing understanding and acceptance of autism and other neurological differences. Sophie is 12 now, thriving in a school that celebrates her unique abilities rather than trying to normalize them. She's already showing interest in following in my footsteps as a researcher, though she wants to focus on helping other autistic children feel valued and understood. My family still reaches out occasionally, especially when media coverage reminds them of our Nobel Prize. They've learned to use the right words, neurodivergent instead of abnormal, differently abled instead of disabled, but they haven't learned what really matters. True acceptance isn't about using politically correct terminology. It's about making room at the table for everyone, not banishing children to garages because they process the world differently. Sophie taught me that autism isn't something to overcome. It's something to celebrate. And celebrating her mind led to one of the most important scientific discoveries of our time. The world is finally beginning to understand what I've known all along. Different isn't broken. Different is brilliant. And sometimes, different is exactly what the world needs most.